You're playing the big spell.
I mean, that was the original meta.
Right.
Everyone just played big spell, mage, and banned warlock, and that was nice and simple. Back in simpler times.
Well, this is going to be the mirror match, and of course, often it comes down to the person who gets Jaina first, the person who mills themselves the least, right? So who draws the less with Raven Familiar / Arcanologist. It's also a pretty big deal, you know, how many ice blocks you've got in your deck. Do you have one? Do you have two? Because that also gives you an extra turn. And Luker's running the single, whereas his opponent's running two of them, so that already gives him the edge in the matchup by default.
There's a weird way you can lose this match when you think you're winning. So you get your Jaina first, and you start generating as many water elementals as possible. But what happens is you actually find, because your opponent's going to get Jaina in the end, so you blizzard a thing and ping it and get another water element. And this seems great. But what happens is when your opponent finally gets Jaina, and we are going to have a Jaina off, is you've used all your AoE, and they find a way to create a water elemental or two of their own, and actually you can't kill those. And even though you've been making water elementals every turn for 5 turns, you're the one who loses because you're the one who runs out of stuff. It's really weird.
Yeah, it's actually one of the most dynamic matchups I think we've seen in terms of control decks. Now, granted, you can't tell because they're just pinging each other for 7 turns in a row, but this matchup can get really intricate in the very later stages of the game, and the AoE becomes crucial. Whoever has the last piece usually gets a bit of an edge, and we know that Luker's running an extra Flame Strike. He's got Medivh as well as an extra threat that Fujitora's deck doesn't run, and we see here the Eater of Secrets, which can equalize the secret count. So you've got 1 ice block. Well, I also have only the 1. The upside of having Eater of Secrets over 2 ice blocks is when you're setting up a kill and they think they're safe, you can actually bypass that. Whereas Fujitora never really gets to bypass the first ice block. Right. Luker can completely ignore the second one by popping the first one.
It goes to fatigue a lot of the time as well. So we're going to the phase now where they have to empty their hand. And you see their Fujitora getting rid of the Dragon's Breath, and that's because when you get to the fatigue stages, Dragon's Breath does nothing, so it's the least relevant of your AoE spells.
That's an interesting spot. We see Luker holding on to Ice Block for, no particular reason, you would think. But what it lets him do is actually maximize the value of the Arcane Artificer, where he's able to play, a few spells with it. So you can go Artificer into Ice Block, into Dragon's Fury. That's going to give you 16 armor. Doesn't seem like much, but it's about the most...
no, when you get to that fatigue, that's huge.
Is the most armor you're going to get, because you're going to spend the full 8 mana of your turn and double that up instead of escalating over a few turns where you can get maybe a total of 14. So this is really what Luker is looking at here, is how to maximize armor generation.
Another game of chicken that happens in this is you want to leave your Dragon Caller Alana until your opponent gets a fatigue because of what I just said about Dragon's Fury. They can no longer Dragon's Fury the dragons, oddly enough. And this means they're going to do that, and you've got your dirty rats waiting to try and catch that the turn before they play it. It's your opponent's job to play it when they think you're out of anything to work with Dragon's Fury, and it's your job to dirty rat it like the turn before they play it. Because if you hit Dragon Caller's Alana, you just win the game unless your opponent hits you back. There's all these things that have to be known through playing the matchup a million times, but we're getting into the stage now where people have to play a card.
Right, just dump their hand effectively, right?
And it's hard because you want them all.
You kind of want to maintain your big spells for the Artificer. The Dark Reaper gives your opponents Meteors, and Firelands Portal is a good target, which always kind of hurts in this spot as there's usually nothing else to do. Luker expected it. He knew full well that this is what was coming, and he has the answer in the form of the Flame Strike if he wants to use it early. Can get himself the first 7 armor going here to dump the hand a little bit.
Well, one interesting thing now is he has Jaina, so he doesn't necessarily want to kill these minions because they're water elementals waiting to happen. So you've got to balance how much you want to do that.
I think the advantage that Luker's got here is his Artificer is still alive, whereas his opponent's minions aren't at the moment. So we're going to have like a battle of the Jainas, right? Where in some cases having the Artificer last gives you a bit of an edge.
Well, this goes really strangely now because no one's ever going to ping this Artificer.
Right, precisely, because everybody wants the last ping on it.
It's like those games where you have to sort of cross out the number of dots.
But in a game where Fujitora begins with Jaina and Luker hasn't found his by this point, it's absolutely one-sided because it snowballs out of control in favor of Fuji very frequently.
Yep. Yeah, as long as he's not greedy with the AoE, but as they've both got it, the key now is to not be overly... you've got to get your water elementals, but you don't get to them by just using your AoE and pinging, that actually doesn't add up as well as you would think it does when it gets to the later stages and you've got Dragon Callers everywhere running around with 6/5/5s.
Yeah, so Luker used up one of the artificers here, which was interesting to me, as I didn't think it was particularly necessary. Again, going back to my point about artificer plus ice block Dragon's Fury, maximizing the amount of armor you can get in one turn. Because usually they tend to die to AoE right afterwards.
Just
right?
that his
They
hand
just
is
blow
full
up.
of stuff, so he had to do something.
Right, because the alternative was you play Dirty Rat and pray you snipe something good, but sometimes the Dirty Rat just doesn't give you anything worthwhile. You're looking to snipe, in some cases, the Doomsayers that haven't been played, so I expect the Ooze is going to stay in hand to mitigate the power of those Dirty Rats. The Archaeologist is going to stay in hand, possibly the Raven staying in hand. I really don't see...
The Raven
Fujitora
stays in
going
hand, you
all
don't
in.
want to draw the card.
Right, precisely.
So it's really bad if you have to play your Raven. One card is huge in this. You have to draw one card more than you want. Yeah, and he's laughing because he doesn't want to, he's got a handful of stuff he can't play.
Oh, this is what the matchup usually comes down to. Fuji has given his opponent a free ping, but he's setting up the Meteor here, knowing full well that, yes, his opponent gets a 3/6, but he gets to dump a Meteor out of that hand.
And yeah, Luka not able to dump anything at all right now.
It's fine for the time being, but in a little bit later it gets a lot less fine.
Yeah, and you try to set up for it in advance before it gets less fine because weird things can happen, and that's a card he might be tempted to throw out there.
I'd like to mention, though, that the deck from Fujitora does not run Dirty Rat, and that's a very essential part of it. That's a lot of armor gone. Okay, sure. It's no Dragon Caller, Alana, or Alex Straza, but fair enough. It does give Luker something to do in this spot.
That's always an interesting play as well. We saw Race in Copa America basically play Doomsayer when he had nothing else in hand to bait, but we saw his opponent try it back to him later, and his opponent had a handful of like Fuji has now, and you just go, okay, I'll call your bluff, I'll pull your Dragon Caller, good. And that's the end of that game of Hearthstone.
Suncaller is amazing against mages, but again, it does have some value for Flame Strike purposes, Fireland's Portal purposes for Luker, so he can still extract something out of this minion. And again, like going back to our initial point, Fireland's Portal doesn't really have too many good targets in the matchup. The only thing you really get out of it is when you get to kill an enemy elemental, right? So you're able to kill that 3/6 and then ping it off.
I'm just
minion.
This Dreadlord's going to make the ping math. It's not complicated, but it's just an extra layer of awkwardness you've got to factor in every single turn.
I mean, given that it triggers at the end of the turn for Fuji, what it means is you just don't let it, for Fuji it changes very little. All it gives him is a reason to polymorph, essentially, because Meteor can hit Alex Straza when she comes out at some stage.
Right.
Medivh here could definitely be a play, but he's got to worry about the Ooze. He knows it's present in his opponent's deck. Not necessarily for Medivh, that's not really where you're looking to play the Ooze for, but it will incidentally snipe the weapon.
Yeah, and Fuji would have waited for this moment for it, and Medivh is massive in his matchup. It's one of the big threat-generating cards, because neither side wins. You win, again, I've used this phrase already today, but you win because of the water elementals, but you don't win with them. You actually need to win with your Medivh or similar. I'm just checking Fuji's deck now, as it's slightly unusual.
Well, he's just running a lot of value. I mean,
yeah, he's
not running the Lich
either.
King shenanigans. I think, in general, Luker's deck is more well-tailored.
Yeah, Luker's is just the standard deck with Eater thrown in.
Right. There's no... Like, the fact that he's running Dirty Rat already could have given him a crazy edge here, right? Like, the fact that he could have just stolen Dragon Caller Lana is insane. He didn't end up doing it, but it could have occurred. And so the little techs here and there make a difference. The double Tar Creeper can be impactful, even though I'd rather get double Stonehill Defender. We've seen the Sunkeeper already come out.
Fuji's has one Medivh's Valet.
Yeah.
You say they're not running Frostbolt. Obviously they can't, but that's a way of having a mini Frostbolt, basically.
It's an odd choice to include in the deck. It's mostly a tech that you put in against aggro, so that you can go, turn 2 Archaeologist, turn 3 Ice Block, turn 4 Ping plus Medivh's Valet against aggressive decks. Not really going to play a huge role in this one, I imagine.
Well, the weapon did have the fate we expected it to have, and now it is Luka's turn to decide what to do with the Doomsayer. He knows there's no Dirty Rats, like you said, in the other deck, which means he can play it at his leisure.
Yeah, playing the Doomsayer here would only give your opponent a ping, as they'd be able to just attack with it and with a 3-2. So if you play Doomsayer, you've got to play more than that, right?
Yeah, Blizzard doesn't seem the worst case here. If you play Blizzard, you might as well start hitting face for 7s.
Right, I think that's one of the best options in terms of damage output, but it also ignores the fact that if Alana comes out and you don't have all your polymorphs out of the deck, then, or your ice blocks, for instance, which are currently, there's already one ice block in the hand, and there's only one in the deck.
Yep.
But if polymorphs are not out and Dragon's Fury doesn't hit for 5, you just get blown up.
Yeah, and Luca's generating a board. And thing that is different in this to how it used to be is not everyone's like just piling out those water elementals. When we watched the first million matches of this, everybody thought it was correct to make as many water elementals as possible. Well, it is, but you can't waste that AoE. Luca's using this AoE really judiciously in this game. He's making sure he gets massive value out of each AoE, because when you get to the end of the game in 14 turns time or whatever it is, you suddenly find yourself lacking. There's something comes up that you can't deal with.
And this is a really high pressure turn. 10 armor being chucked away here for Fuji, and he doesn't have another Artificer. So his health total right now is contingent upon elementals restoring it. The armor gain is null for the future. So Luke, you're already in a dominant position. Again, you don't want to overextend too much because you risk the
right.
Just giving your opponent's AoE a solid amount of value. He does, however, have another turn here to wait, as he's got 9 cards in hand, so he doesn't have to expend anything for the time being.
Meteor Ping deals with the board state, but it's his last AoE spell, and
you will never let
deal with it anymore. Yeah,
if
exactly.
it's got 4 health against a mage that still has meteors in their deck, that's just not happening. You do open up the blizzards, but you can't let the meteors happen, especially in a case like this. He basically played around meteor as well as you could expect somebody to.
Yeah, and Fuji's looking at these Ravens like, I don't want to play the Ravens, but at some point I'm going to have to. And that's when you start losing. That's when you're starting to just throw away your end game.
Yeah.
You're just losing your future.
I mean, the thing, too, is that he's almost dead, technically, given that Alex Straza coming down here would put him at, 2 health left at the end of this line. So we'll see if Luker opts for that, because I wouldn't be surprised if he just went in, because there's no health restoration aside from the enemy's Alex. Which would then put you on the back foot. I expect you're going to try to get the most out of this board as you can and make a water elemental in the process.
Yep, you're getting meteors next turn.
Sure.
The way that last ping just went down, but yeah, like you say, we'll have a water elemental each and see how that goes down.
You have to make a very solid read to ever go for Alex Straza this early in the game.
And we said this yesterday, like, Jaina versus Jaina, the problem is that no one can kill each other. When you lose your Atiesh, if that hadn't been lost, Luka would win this game. But the rest of the time, nobody really wins because the healing, when 2 water elementals collide, just keeps both of you high health total. But what you can do is just get ahead going into that fatigue at the end.
There can be a double trade here, bringing back up Fuji to 29 if Luker wants to. As there's no real easy way to set up a ping. He could go for the 1 Blizzard, again, going back to the initial point, but that means the Dragon's Fury now with Flame Strike out of the deck, he's even less likely to clean up a Dragon Caller Alana, which, Fuji hasn't played a ton of 5+ spells, so she's not yet too big a threat. But that's something to keep in mind. I wonder if we see the Blizzard here come down. Or if it's going to be a Tark Reaper Doomsayer type turn. Both of these turns seem rather weak to me.
I think that he has been playing to the game time I've been talking about, just knowing not to use that AoE. Don't be too scared of a water elemental. Don't be too scared of an individual anything. You can blow them up later. Don't be too tempted to make your own water elementals too often. And I think that Luka is playing this matchup extremely well. He's very good at strategic play. That's his massive strength. He understands matchups incredibly well. The reason that he's not the best known player in the entire world, instead of where he is, which is a very strong player, is he does make the occasional silly mistake.
He does make a lot of denies in the match. It seems like those kept on happening repeatedly. And that's going to be, again, a prevention of Blizzard. You don't get the Blizzard ping my elemental. If I don't get the Blizzard ping your guys either. So playing a game of chicken, going back to our initial points here. There's no 1 damage AoE in either deck. And there's no way for them to generate it, so they're fully aware that these elementals are going to be staying as it is. You don't want to ping them down to 1 either, because then the enemy mage gets to sort of resummon the elemental.
Right.
Doomsayer seems reasonable to me. I mean, I don't know when else you play it unless you play Blizzard Doomsayer at some later stage of the game against Alana. So the alternative is to just mill a card, which I don't think is very wise.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, this line of play seems the most stable of all of them. And the hand from Fuji is filled with absolute air. You can't play Dragon Caller, you can't play Alexstrasza at any reasonable point. The only card you're happy to dump on this board right now is going to be Skulking Geist. Like, next turn, I expect Skulking Geist and then pass. And, like, that's about the only turn that he's got coming up.
Yeah, and he is going to pass now, but like you say, he's going to have to do something, so this is just nothing going on.
One polymorph out of the deck, so Dragon's Fury now hitting for 5 a lot more reliably for Luker. He has used a polymorph. He has had a polymorph used against him, but he has not used his yet, as he killed the Sunwalker with the ping plus Firelands Portal. So still a polymorph to go before he's able to guarantee that Dragon Caller Alana is dealt with Dragon's Fury.
Yeah, he's got obviously the Blizzard and stuff as well, but finally has to play that ice block he's been trying not to throw out there since the start of the game.
I mean, again, it's like Artificer plus Ice Block Blizzard is 9 armor. So you either go for double Artificer, Ice Block, Dragon's Fury, which wipes them off the board, or you get 7 from one and 9 from the other. There's about 2 ways to go to get the maximum armor.
And now
easily.
He's got decision time. I wonder how tempted he is to throw the Alexstrasza out there.
I think it flames. I mean, Alexstrasza is reasonable in that she eats removal no matter what. She might eat the Blizzard if there's a second copy there.
I think you might save your Flame Strike for Flame Strike into Alana after you Blizzard, so you can kill the dragons over 2 turns.
Sure. I mean, either way, he's got enough AoE to navigate this matchup handily on average.
You don't want to give your opponent a good polymorph. That's the problem. You're always waiting for the best possible polymorph to get yourself those water elementals and obviously get the most out of your polymorph. So throwing away the Dragon's Fury, because when this does get to fatigue, as I said earlier, they're just completely useless. That's usually a throwaway card, but he did have to use it a bit earlier than he would have liked.
Let's see if Fuji can pick up something huge. Sometimes you pick up a Sawgoth and you're just looking at this and the mage just panics. But looks like it's all going to be very mild. 5 health maximum within the range and reach of an enemy control mage. So no high roll there for Fujitora. Really needed something like that, I feel like, to stabilize. You know, get a Lich King, get one of those very late-game powerful minions.
Yeah, this is just not the stuff you're looking for. In fact, it takes Wax Elemental just to throw it out there, I think, here. It's just got the right numbers for not being pinged to.
Precisely, yeah. If you take a 5 health minion, well, you're going to get Flame Strike ping, and then Elemental comes out. Wax Elemental guarantees that can't occur. No 1-cost spells in either deck. It's called Big Spell Mage.
Not one
for
drop.
a reason.
Yeah. Second polymorph in hands now. And
at last, though, the water elementals are now starting to snowball in one player's favor because the other doesn't have removal. Fuji doesn't have anything to do to these elementals. Luker still has damage to apply and then turn into elementals.
This is the product of him being so greedy throughout the game with that removal. It's gone from, oh, I might take an extra 3 damage, so what, to here's that damage I took earlier being turned against you. I'll get my healing back. I mean, he doesn't need to as it happens. And more, and start to get some tempo. And Fuji is running on empty right now. He needs that gas station urgently.
Yeah, and the scary part, too, is he's 1 card lower in fatigue at the moment. He's at 5 cards to Luker's 6. So currently, Luker has the advantage when it comes to winning that fatigue war. And so if it means that the opponent's health drops down by 6 earlier than his, because usually about, I think, like fatigue 5 is where you're gonna die on your next draw if the enemy mage does it correctly.
Sure.
Because you can be taking something like up to 15 damage and then you're dead. And if at some point they can almost set up Alexstrasza to 2-turn kill you.
Luka did only have the 1 Dirty Rat, and looking at what's happened since, he'd used it at the best possible time. Because there's no way well, there's obviously a way, but the maths of hitting it right now, if you're trying to hit Alana, would have been awful. He had about a 1 in 4 when he played it.
Yeah, I wonder if pinging the Wax Elemental was correct here, given that he had the option of simply pinging his own Arcanologist and denying that Blizzard ping. Slight potential misstep.
I wonder if he doesn't mind this Blizzard.
I mean, maybe he just wants to give his opponent an elemental to turn it into one of his own.
I think Fuji is using his removal here a little bit urgently, and he's going to have trouble when Dragoncaller Alana is played. Remember, he has no Dirty Rat. The Dragoncaller Alana is going to be played, so I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was a deliberate bait from Luca. Going to find a way to ride these out, and then just play Dragoncaller Alana and fly to victory at the end.
The second polymorph for Luker, you sort of need to keep for
Yeah.
the Alex Straza, unfortunately. So there's really no other way to use it. You could just drop the Gaius now. Again, another bulky minion that can set up a counter ping. But polymorphs, I think he's got another polymorph in the deck for the Dragon's Fury.
He used it on something.
Oh
a
yeah, the
moment
other
ago.
elemental, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's down to Blizzard AoE, which is actually correct because double Blizzard Flamestrike wipes not only elementals but Alex Straza in the process.
Fuji was like the worst possible pickup.
And one of the worst possible hands in this matchup. I mean, you've got nothing.
You have got nothing, but it's because he's been using that AoE through the game. I'm ranting a little bit about it, but Luca has been very, very greedy with that AoE, and that's why he's got some left. Now it matters. In fairness, the fact he plays Medivh in his deck forced Fuji to have to take some. So some of it is deck building that has led to this point as well. Fuji's deck much more tailored to deal with, say, Dude Paladin, which Luca couldn't deal with so easily when he just died in 6 turns earlier.
It's also an interesting quirk of the matchup that Luker, like they both found Jaina, so we had an even footing there, an even game. But Luker also didn't get stuck with all the Raven familiars and Arcanologists, and it also shows that the having the 1 of Ice block over 2 Ice blocks, while it might be a drawback for consistency against aggressive lineups in some cases, you do get the advantage of occasionally just winning because your Arcanologists are not hampering your draw. Like, he's only running 1 Arcanologist.
Right.
That's playing in his favor at the moment.
Yeah, you just run less stuff. That gives you those 2 Dirty Rats. It didn't win in this game, but it gave him about a 1 in 4, 1 in 5. I can't remember how many minions there were, of just winning the game on that Doomsayer turn. You hit Alana, that's GG at that point.
Yeah, so we're going through the final stages of Fujitora or Luker's demise coming up. We're about to hit the points where Dragoncaller is going to need to come out, Alex Straza is going to need to come out, and somebody will have to commit. And it looks like Fuji is going to be the guy who presses the button first, and Luker's got the answer. This board is scary, but it's not enough.
Yeah, and it's not enough. I'm going to have to say it again. It's not enough as he picks up the Doomsayer to give himself even more because he's been greedy with his removal. This is what Fuji spent the whole game trying to stop happening. And just because of how Luca has played, he hasn't been able to stop this inevitable outcome. And he got to the point where he's got to play it just in case Luca's bottom 2 cards or whatever they are the AoE cards. But Fuji knew this was over some time ago, I think.
So playing Doomsayer here is an interesting line. I think he thought about it. Do I want to do this? Is this even worth it? Because the only real upside of playing Doomsayer is, well, they can't really play, some kind of Alex Straza. But either way, the enemy mage is oftentimes just going to try to wipe your board instead of doing anything else that's cute. And Fujitora just doesn't have a good play that on its own.
And this is where you see who's played the game the best. I mean, and who's built the deck the best. Like I say, Medivh was a big advantage, but you look at their hands, you cancel out the things that are the same, and Luca just has better cards left in his hand.
Better card management, better threat management. We saw earlier in the game, when Medivh and the Eater of Secrets were allowed to ping for 10 in the face, just to punch for 10 through the armor.
Right.
And also, the whole Artificer getting pulled by Dirty Rat, it's another little minute thing where that changes the amount of health. Like, you see Luca at 31, he's way above that in practice, because he can use the Artificer to get way
and a little bit of
above
fortune. This Acolyte of Pain hasn't been sat in his hand the entire time.
Yeah.
And this was a thing when your opponent did play Dirty Rat, it was another card you could hit at the end of the game. That's why I was more used to saving the Dirty Rats, because you wait until the very end and you try and hit their Acolyte and you ping it twice, and suddenly they're dead.
So, Flame Strike plus Volcanic Potion makes short work of this, but he's dead on the following turn of Fatigue. Alex Straza or not, there's nothing here that's going to bring Fujitora back.
Fuji will not surrender to Luca.
He will simply not hit that concede, but will do it at the very end, loses the mirror match, and Luca will take it, putting another point on the board, tying up the series. And so Fujitora is going to have to really work